The battlefield still smoked with the aftershocks of the raid. The jungle canopy had burned away in patches, and ash floated down like black snow. Lieutenant Evan Kaur stepped carefully over charred wreckage, scanning the destroyed Ashari outpost for survivors. His pulse rifle buzzed low, ready. The signal had come 2 hours ago, a priority distress beacon from a diplomatic contact zone. By the time Earth's military ship received it, most of the defenders had already been silenced. Evan's boots crunched against scorched soil. A broken wall cracked as he moved past it, the reek of plasma fire and ozone choking the air. This had been no random strike. Someone had known where to hit and how. He wasn't here just for recovery. He was here to see if there was anyone left. He swept his scanner across the ruins. The device chirped softly, then pinged. Life detected. Weak. Nearby. He broke into a jog, heading toward the crumbled section of a shelter dome. There, half buried beneath collapsed support beams and debris, was a figure. Slender, armored in cracked Ashari ceremonial plating. She was unconscious but breathing, her lavender-hued skin streaked with blood and dust. He dropped to one knee beside her and checked her pulse. Steady but fading. One of her arms was twisted unnaturally, and a large shard of metal had pierced her leg. Still, she was alive. Evan took a deep breath and began to clear the rubble, careful not to jostle her injuries. As he worked, his hand brushed against something beside her. A sword. No, not just a weapon, a Ashari clamblade. It was ornate, curved like a crescent moon, its hilt wrapped in embroidered cloth bearing ancient family sigils. It pulsed faintly, as if rejecting his presence. He paused, remembering the countless briefings Earth's diplomats had given about Ashari traditions. The clamblade was sacred, only touched by family or bonded warriors. Outsiders handling it without cause could start a war, or worse, a blood oath. But the woman stirred, whispering weakly. "My sword," she croaked, "must not be left." He looked around. The area was still unstable. Another tremor, and the blade might be lost forever. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Evan reached in and pulled the sword free from the rubble. The metal was warm, almost alive. He handed it to her. The moment her fingers closed around it, she went rigid. Her eyes shot open. He expected pain. Instead, she looked stunned. "By the sacred law," she whispered. "What?" Evan blinked. You lifted my clan's blade for me. In protection." He frowned. "You were dying. What was I supposed to do? You have invoked the right of claim. The sword, it has chosen you. So have I." Evan stared at her, confused. "I don't follow." "I am Princess Silyara of House Vorthan," she said, wincing as she sat up. "By our custom, the one who lifts the clamblade in protection of its wielder is now bound. You are now my shield, my consort." Evan's jaw dropped. Wait. Are you saying I just married you?" "In the eyes of my people," she said quietly. "Yes." There was a long silence between them as another explosion rumbled in the distance. "You have got to be kidding me." She shook her head solemnly. "You may refuse. But if you do, the bond is broken by blood. It would dishonor both of us and provoke retaliation from my house." Evan stood there, mouth still half open, not sure if he was hallucinating. He'd come to rescue survivors. He had not expected a political engagement or a royal one. Within hours, an Ashari warship landed to evacuate the site. The crew bowed to Silyara, their queen-to-be, and then to him. The humans on the rescue team exchanged glances, realizing Evan had done something they couldn't even begin to explain. "Protector bound," one of the Ashari warriors called him respectfully. "We honor your courage." Evan didn't feel honored. He felt trapped. Back aboard the Earth vessel, medics treated her wounds. Silyara insisted that Evan remain close. By tradition, they were not to be separated for 3 cycles. She wasn't cold toward him. In fact, she seemed grateful, curious, even warm. But every interaction came with layers of expectation and culture Evan wasn't prepared for. "I didn't mean to claim anything," he told her one evening. "You meant to save a life?" she replied. "That is all our laws require." He rubbed his face and stared at the ceiling. "But I'm not royalty. I'm just a soldier." Silyara leaned closer. "That may be true on Earth. But here, among my people, you are now more." She touched the hilt of her sword, now hung beside her bed. "And others will challenge you for that right." Evan glanced at the blade. "You mean, like a duel?" Her eyes darkened. "Yes, many. and some won't wait for the formalities. He exhaled slowly. 1 minute he was a lieutenant in a cleanup operation. The next, he was the unofficial heir consort to a princess of a warrior race, with assassins likely gunning for him. Worst of all, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Because if what she said was true, this bond had implications. Not just for them, but for Earth, for the Alliance, and for whatever enemies dared to come for her next. 3 days later, Evan stood inside a circular arena on Vorthen Prime, surrounded by roaring crowds. Thousands of Ashari watched from high terraces carved into the sides of a volcanic crater. They shouted his new title like a challenge, echoing it across the lava-lit sky. Protector bound. He gripped the ceremonial blade they'd given him, Silyara's backup weapon, not the sacred clan blade she still carried. She watched from a private box, her expression unreadable. He wasn't sure whether she was worried or proud. Maybe both. Across from him, the challenger entered. 7 feet tall, covered in shimmering gray armor, and bearing a battle axe that looked older than Earth's first cities. Jorel of the Ember Clans, the announcer cried. First to contest the humans' claim. Evan barely understood the customs of this place, but he understood the basics. Some Ashari warriors couldn't accept a human being tied to their princess. To them, honor had to be tested. And so, they issued trials, single combat. If he lost, they'd consider his bond with Silyara void. If he died, well, that settled it, too. Evan wasn't a master swordsman. He was a soldier, trained with rifles and sidearms. But Silyara had shown him enough in the past 3 days that he could at least swing without embarrassing himself. The horn sounded. Jorel charged. Evan sidestepped, barely dodging the downward strike of the axe. The ground cracked beneath the blow. He swung low, slicing across Jorel's thigh, but the warrior barely flinched. A glancing hit, maybe. Jorel came at him again, faster. Evan blocked, sparks flying, and kicked off the ground to get distance. The crowd roared with approval. He remembered what Silyara had said. Ashari fights are not always about winning through strength. They value strategy, skill, adaptation. That meant he couldn't go toe-to-toe. He had to think like a human. Improvise. As Jorel lunged again, Evan dropped to one knee and slid beneath the warrior's guard, using his own smaller frame as an advantage. He slashed upward, striking the weak joint under the arm. Jorel stumbled, grunting. Evan rolled away, breathing hard. His arms ached. His blade vibrated with every clash. Then, suddenly, Jorel raised a hand. Blood dripped down his side. He pounded his chest once, and turned. Yield. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into cheers. Evan lowered his sword. He didn't feel like a champion, but he was alive. He turned to Silyara's balcony. She nodded once, a small smile on her lips. That night, after the medics treated his bruises, she came to see him. You didn't have to do that, she said. If I didn't, someone else would have stepped up next, Evan replied. And the next one might not stop at first blood. She sat across from him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. You are different than any warrior my people have known. Because I don't want to be here? No, she said. Because you fight like someone who values life more than pride. Evan looked at her. That's not how it works here. Not always. He leaned back. So what happens now? Do I keep fighting until there are no challengers left? There's another way, she said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. And that is? You can take part in the binding ceremony. Make the bond formal. Sacred. Then no one can challenge it again. Evan hesitated. You mean, actually go through with the marriage? To protect both of us. And to silence those who seek your blood. He looked out at the distant towers of the Ashari capital, glowing blue under the twin moons. I didn't sign up for any of this, he said. I know, she replied. But you saved my life. Now we are tangled together. And whatever comes next, we face it together. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he nodded. All right, let's see this through. She stood and offered him her hand. He took it. Outside, the night sky burned with the trails of ships arriving for the royal ceremony. And deep in the shadows, another figure watched the city, a blade glinting in the dark. Because not all enemies challenged from the front. The binding ceremony took place at dawn. The Temple of Blades was carved into the side of a mountain, where molten rivers glowed beneath crystal floors. Evan stood in ceremonial armor, a cloak draped across his shoulders that marked him as protector bound. At his side, Silyara stood tall, wrapped in the shimmering robes of her royal station. Her clan's blade rested between them on a stone pedestal. The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. An elder stepped forward. "Do you, Silyara of the Fireborn line, accept this bond, forged in battle and bound by blood?" "I do," she said calmly. "And do you, Evan of Earth, take this bond, not as a conqueror, not as a prize, but as a shield and companion, one soul to another?" Evan looked at her, then at the sword. His heart raced, but he nodded. "I do." The elder gestured to the blade. "Then seal it." Together, they placed their hands on the hilt. Light surged from the stone, a bright blue glow that rose like a flame. The crowd murmured in awe. In that moment, Evan felt something pass between them, not just heat or pressure, but memory, shared experience. Her pain, his fear. The bond wasn't symbolic. It was real, and now it was sealed. But the silence shattered. A flash of energy struck the temple walls, sending cracks through the crystal. The crowd screamed. Guards rushed in, weapons raised. Evan grabbed the sword from the pedestal. "Get down," he shouted to Silyara, pulling her behind a column as more blasts rocked the chamber. Outside, explosions lit the morning sky. Ships flew overhead, not of Ishari design. Evan caught a glimpse, sleek, dark fighters with jagged wings. He didn't recognize the make, but he knew what they meant. This wasn't a clan challenge. This was war. A Ishari guard staggered toward them, wounded. Assassins slipped through the outer shields. They came for her. Evan turned to Silyara. "We've got to move." She nodded, already reaching for her secondary weapon. "My mother will be in the Citadel Tower. That's where they'll strike next." Together, they moved through the shattered halls, dodging falling stones and panicked guests. More guards fell in beside them, but the enemy was relentless, trained, precise, and clearly targeting the royal line. In one corridor, they were ambushed. Blades clashed. Evan fought with the clan's sword, its weight more familiar now. He ducked, blocked, and countered. Blood sprayed. He didn't feel the pain until it was over. Silyara touched his arm. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he lied. They reached the Citadel gates. Two of her mother's personal guards were down. The door had been breached. Inside, a tall figure in obsidian armor stood over the queen, holding a weapon to her throat. Evan didn't hesitate. He charged, slamming into the intruder with the full weight of his body. The blade missed the queen's neck by inches. They tumbled across the floor. Evan swung wildly, barely keeping the attacker off him. The sword was knocked from his hand. The enemy raised his blade. But Silyara was faster. She fired 2 shots. The armored figure dropped. The queen gasped, sitting up. You came for me." Silyara helped her up. "You're not dying today." Evan sat beside the corpse, chest heaving. "Who are these guys?" The queen touched a wound on her arm. "They're not from any clan. They're outsiders. Mercenaries." "Then someone paid them," Silyara said coldly. Evan stood, picking up his blade. "Whoever it is, they're not done." From the tower window, fires burned across the city. The battle was just beginning. The city was on fire. From the tower's edge, Evan watched plumes of smoke rising over domed buildings. The attackers weren't just after the temple. They were striking government halls, communication hubs, and power centers. This was a coordinated assault. Someone wanted the Ishari Empire to fall, starting with its royal line. Silyara moved swiftly, issuing commands to her captains through wrist comms. She was no longer just a princess or a survivor. She was stepping into the role of a commander. Evan followed her through a narrow skybridge that led to the Citadel's defense chamber. Soldiers scrambled to activate turrets and raise shields, but the network was fragmented. The assassins had planted malware. Every few minutes, another system failed. "They knew exactly where to hit," Silyara said, scanning a collapsing map projection. Evan stepped forward. "What can I do?" She looked at him, eyes scanning the blade in his hand. "You've already done more than most would. But if you're serious," "I am." "Then you're not just my protector anymore. You're fighting for our people now." The door opened. A breathless scout entered. "We've confirmed the source. The mercenaries came from the Varnak Syndicate. They're being backed by the Syrinx Coalition." Silyara's jaw clenched. "The Syrinx have denied our treaties for years. This is their declaration." The queen, injured but upright, leaned against the console. "Then we respond in kind." "But with what?" One of the officers snapped. "Half our fleet is grounded. Command channels are scrambled. We can't even reach the outer moons. Evan stepped forward. We don't need to reach them. Just get me to a fighter. I'll make sure they know Earth stands with you. The Queen raised an eyebrow. One fighter against a fleet. No. One pilot carrying proof that Earth won't sit by while our allies burn. He turned to Silyara. Do you trust me? I do. They led him to the hangar, a reinforced vault beneath the citadel. Inside sat the Emberwing, a sleek interceptor gifted to Silyara from a Terran admiral during a past alliance ceremony. It had been barely used. Its weapons were sharp, engines humming with plasma charge. Evan climbed into the cockpit. Send the coordinates of the Sarek's command ship. I'll knock. He launched into the smoky sky. As he broke atmosphere, a dozen enemy ships locked on. Alarms blared. He dodged left, dove between bursts of plasma fire, and returned a few shots of his own. He wasn't aiming to kill, just to draw attention. The Sarek's cruiser appeared like a black mountain against the stars. He opened a wideband channel. This is Evan Carter of Earth. I carry a message. They didn't respond. Instead, they launched missiles. He juked hard to the right. Shields flared. Fine. You want a message? Here it comes. He activated the Emberwing's override and launched the data pod containing proof of the attack, satellite images, battle footage, recordings of mercenary chatter. The pod shot toward neutral space, pinging Earth and several allied worlds. Then he turned the fighter back around. Time to make some noise. He raced toward the nearest Sarek's destroyer, evading turret fire. With precise strikes, he disabled their engine core, not to destroy, but to embarrass. The ship began spinning out of control. More Sarek's vessels scrambled. He grinned. Yeah, I've got your attention now. Suddenly, the sky shimmered. From hyperspace, 5 Terran warships dropped into orbit. The data pod had reached them. The lead ship opened comms. Evan, this is Commander Talia of the UN Valkyrie. Stand down. We'll take it from here. Evan exhaled. Glad you could make it. Back on the planet, the enemy retreated. With Earth's warships in orbit, the Sarek's backed attack faltered. Ground forces scattered. The Queen stood once more on the Citadel balcony and watched the enemy run. Beside her, Silyara smiled. He came through. A voice crackled in her calm, told you I'd come back. She laughed. You're late, she replied. 2 days after the battle, peace had returned to the capital. Ash was still being swept from the temple courtyards. Craters and scorch marks scarred the once beautiful city. But the banners still flew. The people still stood. And in the great ceremonial hall, the Queen prepared to make an announcement that would echo across the stars. Evan stood by a tall window, watching workers rebuild the outer walls. He was no longer wearing combat armor, just a simple dark robe given to him by Silyara's guard. The sword, her clan's heirloom, was laid across a stone altar, its blade now shining with ceremonial polish. Behind him, the Queen entered. You did more than defend a princess, Terran, she said. You defended a people. I didn't do it for medals. No, but you've earned them. She walked to the altar and placed her hand on the sword. This weapon has passed through 20 generations of our line. It is bonded not to the blood, but to the soul of the one who wields it with honor. He turned to her. I only did what was right. Exactly why it chose you. Silyara appeared moments later, wearing the full ceremonial garb of her rank. Elegant armor polished to a mirror sheen, her hair braided with gold threads, her expression proud, but not distant. Are you ready? She asked. For what? The ceremony. What ceremony? Her smile widened. The binding. Before Evan could question further, horns blared through the chamber. Dozens of nobles, warriors, and civilians flooded in, forming a great circle around the altar. The Queen stepped forward and raised her arms. Today, we honor not only survival, but alliance. One forged in fire, sealed in blood, and now bound by tradition. Evan whispered to Silyara, I'm not really good with ceremonies. She whispered back, you'll be fine. Just follow my lead. The Queen continued, this human came to us a stranger. He now holds the spirit of our ancestors. He saved my daughter. He fought for our people. And he holds the blade of our house. Murmurs rose through the chamber. By the old ways, she said, such a warrior is not only accepted, but joined. He is no longer outsider. Silyara stepped beside him and took his hand. You really had no idea, did you? Evan blinked. Nope, none at all. You wielded my clan's sword in my defense. That's a proposal in our culture. One only accepted if the bond is true. He laughed nervously. So, you're telling me I accidentally proposed to you with a sword? She nodded. And I accepted. Silence fell as the queen placed both of their hands on the sword. Let this bond mark a new chapter for our people, and a symbol to all who watch us that Terrence and Ishari stand united. Cheers erupted. Silyara leaned close. Still want to run? Evan shook his head. Not unless you're running with me. Later, under the stars, they stood on the palace balcony, watching lights flicker across the horizon. Rebuilding had already begun. Treaties were being rewritten. Earth had responded swiftly, and the Serics were now negotiating peace. What now? Evan asked. She took his hand. Now we lead. You sure I'm the right guy for that? I'm sure you're the one I want beside me. He looked down at the sword, now resting peacefully in its new place. Well, I guess I'm not just borrowing it anymore. She grinned. No, it's ours now. And in the distance, under the watchful gaze of stars older than empires, the Terran who had simply meant to protect, now stood as prince consort of an alien realm, bound by love, war, and the blade that started it all.